This is GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of Masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 7-3, entitled Why Masculists Look Down on MGTOWs. Description. This flyer explains why Masculists look down on MGTOWs for their apolitical attitudes, thus greatly decreasing the efficiency with which the MGTOW/Masculist ideas could be spread to create a FIP society with menfaired gender laws. The flyer itself, you'll notice I'm looking down more than usual. I'm having increasing difficulty with China's government's fucking firewall. I don't know what they're doing, but the government seems to be winning against the VPNs. It's my impression. So I use an old computer which uses a different operating system. I don't know if that's relevant. Maybe just my particular computer is clogged up with something. I'm not sure. I hate computers in many ways. They don't do what I want. Okay, the flyer. Why Masculists look down on MGTOWs. In a word, because MGTOWs are so fucking apolitical. They are political wimps who don't care enough about the plight of men. For example, manslavery, financial massacring in the divorce courts, etc. To fight collectively for the menfairing of the gender laws. All MGTOWs do is walk away from the marriage market and fatherhood, and a few videos. Now, I don't want to push my disdain as a Masculist towards MGTOWs too much, because MGTOWs are my allies. I have mixed feelings about MGTOWs. For example, if billions of men go MGTOW, that is, refusing to marry and have kids, spending their money on themselves, then the populations will crash, forcing the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws. For example, reforming the divorce laws, bringing in the paternity rejection right, removing legal discriminations against men, etc. So I encourage MGTOWs to boycott marriage and fatherhood. Their strategy is working. Look at Japan, where a third, actually nowadays more, 2/3 I think, of young Japanese males refuse to even date or sex women, the herbivore men. These young Japanese males are so fed up with the traditional Japanese salaryman role of working 11 hours a day plus 2-3 hours commute time to earn money that is totally handed over to the utterly parasitic fluffy Jap housewife who plays tennis while he overworks, that they refuse that model. They want to do their own thing, go their own way. As a result, the Japanese government now has a Minister of Population, whose job it is to try to find ways to get young men to reproduce, since the Japanese population is starting to crash as a result. Ad-libbing now, the peak Japanese population was 128 million. Now it's, in just a few years, now it's down by 1 million, down to 127 or so. And within 20 years, it's estimated once the baby boomers have died off, it'll be at about 2/3 of its current value, so down from nearly 130 million to about 80 million. So it's working. The herbivore men are working. And there are other factors as well, of course. Western countries are about a decade behind Japan in this respect, but the trend is in the same direction. So the Western herbivores, that is MGTOWs, will have the same effect. I can see this, but my beef, that is complaint, is that the Western MGTOWs do almost nothing on the political stage to push Western societies to menfair the gender laws. Most Western MGTOWs are first halvers, that is under 40, living the first half of their lives. I'm a second halver, living in the second half of my life. I'm nearly 70 in a couple of months ad-libbing. I notice a distinct difference in attitude towards political activism amongst first halvers and second halvers when it comes to males. Feminists are a different story. There are so many things that men's libbers, MGTOWs, Masculists, MRAs, that's men's rights activists, etc., need to do to create a FIP society, capital F, capital P, in which all adults are FIPs, financially independent persons, who don't parasite off the money of another person, the way fluffies do to manslaves. For example, men's libs men's lib groups need to be set up in all college campuses and all high schools so that girls are strongly morally pushed to study FIP majors, that is, math and the sciences, so that they become FIPs as adults and capable of buying their own middle-class house, so that they don't try to parasite on some robot male manslave who buys it for them and then has a 1 in 4 risk of being financially massacred by his fluffy wife when she gets bored with him, when she drags him through the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce court. The media needs to be approached so that they can vastly speed up the spread of men's lib ideas, MGTOW, Masculists, MRA, etc. A major article in a major publication or major TV show reaches millions instead of the piddly little tens of thousands that a YouTube video reaches, as is currently the case with MGTOW YouTube videos. Society in general needs to be taught men's lib principles so that schools, teachers, parents educate young women that they have a strong moral duty to become FIPs or they won't get a man. Thanks to the toxicity of the fluffy dominated divorce courts in the US, 70% of young men under 35 refuse to marry and have kids, so young women will not have a kid. If they do not become FIPs, then they will be poor, because they won't be able to earn decent money, because they studied fluffy crap at high school and college. Society needs to be made conscious of masculist/MGTOW ideas so that powerful moral pressure is exerted from all sides on women to be FIPs. The gender politicians need to be lobbied to get them to change the gender laws, reform the divorce laws, bring in the para, etc. Politicians are profoundly corrupt, bought by the central banksters, so they'll only legislate when powerful political or financial forces push them in a given direction. By educating society, political pressure can be exerted on these gender politicians who create the gender laws that so oppress men, especially in the divorce courts and the lack of the para. When the gender political tide turns enough, and is already turning, the gender politicians will start menfairing the gender laws, otherwise they'll be voted out of power by a male bloc vote. And even women pushing for a menfairing of the gender laws so that men can be persuaded to have kids with women again. But MGTOWs don't do much of the above. They do make YouTube videos, which is something, but not much. MGTOWs would be far more effective if they combined their video efforts with political action, that is, setting up men's lib groups at high schools and colleges, approaching the media, as I do regularly, talking to young women that if they don't FIP up, they'll become manless, etc. I get frustrated with MGTOWs that they're so apolitical, so inefficient in their approach to spreading the MGTOW/masculist word. There are far more efficient ways to do this, but they don't take that route, awfully British route. Take contacting the media, for example. I send out my Masculist flyers to the major newspapers in the US and the UK. The columnists in these newspapers are often in their 50s and 60s, at the peak of their power, and hence baby boomers, who think the way I do. They are accustomed to political action because they grew up with it in the 60s and 70s. It only takes a few such powerful journalists to nibble on the MGTOW/masculist bait to produce an article, TV show that reaches millions, and then the ideology, the MGTOW/masculist movement, is launched with the masses. This is something the men's movement desperately needs, but the MGTOWs do nothing along these lines. Yuck! It will be interesting to see how the MGTOWs react once the other branches of the men's lib movement gets the media interested. Probably they will take advantage of the greater public exposure to their ideas by agreeing to have interviews themselves to spread the basic ideas of MGTOW. For example, women don't love men. Women love men's exploitability. Women are hypergamous, etc. The Masculists will push their vision of a FIP society and put enormous moral pressure on women to be FIPs or be punished by the men's lib movement by not getting a man. How many more years do you think, now remember I was writing this 2 years ago, so probably in the year early 2016 maybe. How many more years do you think before nearly everyone has heard of the basic principles of MGTOW/masculism? I think less than a handful. Yeah. Once that happens, society will go through a revolution. Women will be forced to grow up, stop being childlike dependents, stop parasiting on men. Men will no longer be man-slaves. They'll be free to do what they love doing and fulfilling their own dreams. Both MGTOWs and Masculists share this broad goal. The main difference between these two branches of the men's lib movement lies along the political axis. The Masculists are political activists. The MGTOWs are politically passive on the whole. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name de GARIS Masculist MGTOW Flyers. Ciao.